You've been listening to the True Idaho News Podcast. Unfiltered news and opinion for the citizens of Idaho. Get more True News by visiting trueidahonews.com. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit trueidahonews.com/support. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Shane Klass here with True Idaho News, and I have with me today Maria Olsen. She is the Idaho director of the State Freedom Caucus Network, amongst many, many other things. Maria, say hi, and why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself before we deep dive in here?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about all things freedom in Idaho. A little bit about me. I'm born and raised in Idaho, grew up in Idaho Falls, met my husband while we were going to school at the University of Utah. And then after he graduated, we moved to Connecticut, where he finished his PhD in economics. And then we made our way back to Idaho and settled in the Rexburg area, where he took a teaching position at BYU Idaho. And during that time, we decided to become a little bit more politically active. Idaho's a great state because it's so small, you can very quickly become active. And so he got involved in our county Republican Central Committee. And through that time, we saw how many legislators went to Boise as conservatives, but as we all know, what happens when you get to Boise, they began voting as liberals. And so he just decided at one point that he couldn't keep complaining anymore. He had to get off the sidelines and jump into the fray. And he ran for state representative and won. And he ended up serving 3 terms. He ran 5 times, served 3 terms, so left with the winning record. And when he left to go work for the Idaho Freedom Foundation, it allowed me more opportunities to become involved in politics. I was always involved. I ran all of his campaigns. I'm very active in our Republican Women in Madison County, but we really, all the focus of the family was on Ron's job and his position in the legislature. And then as he moved into the Freedom Foundation, it allowed me an opportunity to become more involved in politics as well. And so I took this position as the Idaho director with the State Freedom Caucus Network so that I could really be involved and use my long political experience and expertise to help legislators in the legislature. And so that's kind of how we got to where we are. We sold our home of 22 years and moved to Boise. Actually, Friday was our 1-year anniversary of moving into our house in Boise. So we now live in the great state of Ada. And Mayor McLean is our mayor.
I was going to comment on that. Oh boy. Lucky you.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about the State Freedom Caucus Network. What is that? What exactly do you do? A little bit of the history, even maybe just the entire Freedom Caucus Network.
Sure. So the State Freedom Caucus Network is an offshoot of the House Freedom Caucus. And if you're familiar with them, it's people like Chip Roy, Andy Biggs. Actually, Raul Labrador was one of the founders of it way back then. And they fight a certain way in the House. They're very conservative, particularly fiscally conservative congressmen. And they realized quickly that Congress is a mess. We all know. What is their approval rating like? 10%, if even. It's a mess. And with 435 representatives, there's very little impact that you can have except for just to be vocal. And what we have found is that the battle is really in the states. And so they took that House Freedom Caucus model and moved it into the states. And Andy Roth used to be the president of Club for Growth. And he and Justin Wymette, who was the executive director of the House Freedom Caucus, started the State Freedom Caucus Network. And what they do is they have freedom caucuses in all this. They have 13 right now. And I was just talking to them the other day. They're looking at expanding significantly in the next year, bringing on states that say they're conservative and they act a little conservative, but they need this little conservative coalition that helps continue to push the Overton window to the right. And they've been very successful. There's directors in all of these different states, and really it's our job to staff the legislators that are like-minded in what our principles are.
So there's you sent me over a couple of slides, and
Mm-hmm.
one of those shows how it started and how it's going. And
Yes.
let me just go ahead and bring that up really quick here. So how it started and how it's going, and it's showing the different legislators and their Idaho Freedom Index and their spending index, which on the top, how it started in 2024 is absolutely atrocious. The only
Right.
person that doesn't have an F is Senator Glenita Zitterfeld. And
Zeiderfeld. Yep.
Zeiderfeld,
Mm-hmm.
thank you. I always man,
I
and
know.
she's a dear friend, and I do this back. What happens is I say it one way, and I get it straight in my head, and then I hear somebody else say it the other way. Then I start questioning myself every single time, and
Think about the I. It's always the I.
it is.
Zeiderfeld.
But
Anyway, yeah.
so tell us a little bit about this from 2024 to 2025, and how you got there, and well, really how we got to 2024,
Yeah.
and then how we got to where we are now.
Well, put that slide back up. I know it's tiny and hard for people to see, but I currently working with these 8 people across the bottom there. And you look at Lucas replaced Chris and Clint replaced Chanel Dixon, and you could just scroll through those and you just see we had a major upgrade in the conservative movement when these 8 new legislators, many of them from Magic Valley, took their seats in the legislature. I mean, look at Julie Yamamoto replacing her with Kent Marmon. I mean, and I think the biggest surprise for people was Faye Thompson replacing Megan Blanksma. And oh, well, and then how can you, I mean, look at Jeff Schroeder and then Christy Zitto. I mean, every single one of these is a massive upgrade and improvement. And
A's across the board.
yeah, look at that. It's phenomenal. And I have had the pleasure over the last year of working very closely with these 8 legislators, and we call ourselves the Gang of 8. And we met every morning for prayer. The House side met every morning to discuss bills and make recommendations. The Senate met every day to do the same. We met weekly. What this did was just create a great group of like-minded individuals that really built off of each other's strengths, because there's no way on earth that you can be a subject matter expert in 700 bills.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, between Kent Marmon and Lucas Kaler, they read every single bill that came across their desks for voting.
Imagine
Kent,
that. You mean we don't just vote for it so then we can know what's in it?
oh, no, and I don't think Kent sleeps, and so he was just up all night
Oh,
working on these bills and reading them and digesting them. And then in the morning, they would get together and discuss them, the pros and the cons, and what they heard in committee. And then based on that, they would talk about how this group would want to vote on that. And it was really a fascinating process to watch happen and listen to them. I'm just so impressed with those people.
how many, and I dare ask, how many of our legislator, what percentage would you say actually read through every bill before they vote on it?
Um, Probably not very many, but I was actually pleasantly surprised by some of the new legislators. Like Elaine Price was always very good at reading legislation. Kyle Harris was very good at reading legislation. Chris Bruce. There are several new legislators, and then some that have been there a little while that do read. Tony Wisniewski, always very good
Hmm.
at reading and understanding. And so there are a few that really have that expertise and ability to be able to read and process legislation. And
I
and then,
hate that it says there's really those few that are good at it. I mean, isn't that very telling? Shouldn't all of them be able to do that?
well, here's the issue, Shane. It's way too much legislation,
Yeah.
and it's by design. They are pushing through so many bills that it is, and they always suspend the reading. And
Mm.
so you really don't, you're supposed to have 3 days. It's supposed to be read at length and full. And they obviously don't do that on the floor. And so the legislators they need to develop a process where they can quickly look at the summary, look at the statement of purpose, and skim through the bill. And what I tell everyone is you need to decide what your set of values are when you go to the legislature. Is it constitutional? Is it fiscally responsible? Is it morally sound? When you have a metric that you as a legislator have internalized and understand the principles of freedom, liberty, anti-regulation, you can pretty quickly look at bills and see how it breaks those metrics. And that's what these legislators have done. They understand the first principles of freedom and liberty. If you do not understand that when you go to the legislature, your mind is swimming with so much information, you can't process it. So you have to go right back to first principles, and every bill can fit into something like that. And if it violates those principles, you should be voting no.
So let's talk about those principles. Well, I'm going to get ahead of myself. I want to talk about those principles. So put a
Okay.
pin in that. I want to come back to that, but I have a couple things I wrote down. First thing I wrote in just big letters was suspend reading. And I know these things take place, but this is for those that are listening out there. I'm sure that first time you hear that as well. Okay, what in the world? Suspend reading? Can you talk about that a little bit, and
Yeah.
how that process works and why?
Yeah. So the way it works in the Constitution, I believe it says that the bill needs to be read 3 times. And I think in the olden days they would actually read the legislation over the floor. And then that way everybody has heard the legislation. But you know how much time it would take to read every single bill? I mean, anytime anyone tries to suspend the reading, everyone freaks out because you're forcing the clerk to read a bill, which is her actual job to do. But to move things along, they suspend that reading, and then they just count on the fact that the legislators have read those bills and understand the bills before they get to the floor to debate them. And the reason why this is important, I believe, is that we need to slow down the legislative process. It is supposed to be deliberative. And oftentimes at the end of the session, what you see happening is they suspend all kinds of rules where they suspend the reading calendar. I have seen them take a bill and move it across both chambers, through both committees, through both floors in one day. And there is no way that does not allow time for the public to read the bill or comment on it. And if there's no way you can process all of this information and make a good vote in that quick of a time. So for me, I just feel like it's just a way to ram through legislation.
So you're saying that the Constitution says that it's supposed to be read 3 times, but somehow they suspend the reading of that and it doesn't get read even through a single time. How does that pass the constitutional smell test?
Well, this was a big thing in the early years when Ron was in the legislature. And I love Priscilla Giddings because it would drive her nuts. She'd be like, we're lying every day on the record. Because what they would do, you'll notice when the legislator stands up to present their bill, they'll say, let the record show that the bill has been read line by line and placed before the body for whatever reason. So they just sort of pretend or they tell the journal that the bill has been read, and that you'll see them do that. If you listen to
I
any
know.
session, you hear that and so pretty soon it just becomes rote. And if the legislator doesn't say that, then the clerk starts to read the bill, and then the representative's like, oh, Let the clerk, let the record show. So
So here's a question, and I like to dig into the philosophicals. What if a member of the public were to challenge whether or not a bill was actually read? Is that something that people can do? What's the whole? How do you hold the legislators' feet to the fire to actually do it?
I'm not sure about that. And then I guess I would have to say, what's your end game here? What fight do you really want to have?
Yeah.
What fight do you want to fight? My thing with all of the legislation, it's supposed to be written in clear language that people can understand. So if we have bills that are going through that are difficult to understand, then that's a problem. If we're rushing through crazy bills in a matter of a day, that's a problem. Also, we're supposed to have single subject matter issue bills,
Mm.
and sometimes they'll sneak stuff through that touches 3 or 4 different things. And when we start turning our bills into monster 500-page bills, we have a problem.
That's a big problem. Well, and I guess that would be the end game. The end game would be to force it to slow down to where we stop playing around with all of these virtue signaling bills, like the flag bill, and actually, but that had no teeth in it. So I call it virtue signaling because there's no teeth. But I guess my end game would be to force them to actually do the serious stuff and quit playing games.
Well, yeah,
But
and
that would be something I would love to see.
yeah, and sometimes you'll see legislators ask for bills to be read to slow things down and to make a point. And Priscilla famously did this one year when it was like a 42-page oil and gas bill that they rammed through. And she you can object to the suspending of the reading, and she did that. And they did a call of the House. They shut everybody in and made them listen. And then Speaker Bedke at the time, he asked Priscilla to read that bill. And she said, "Are you asking me or are you telling me?" And he said, "I'm asking you." And she stood up with poise and grace and read a 42-page bill. I was like, she's my hero.
Gunplay Giddings, absolutely
Yes.
love her, and she was treated very unfairly.
Yeah.
But that's probably for
Another
another
story.
show
Yeah.
someday. But okay,
Yeah.
so before it asked you to put a pin in something, so how did they decide to? I guess that was the other thing. We already kind of did that. How did they decide to vote without reading? So we've already covered that. So back to I asked you to put a pin in something.
The metrics.
The metrics. Let's get into that.
Yeah. Um, you, again, as I said before, as a legislator, you need to come to the legislature with your principles firmly rooted and firmly understood. You need to have done the reading. You need to read the Constitution, both. You need to understand Federalist Papers. You need to understand, Bastiat the law. One of the best things to ask a candidate when they're running is, what have you read that has created a foundational knowledge for you so
Hmm.
that I know how you will vote? And this Gang of Eight that I work with also, they have a biblical worldview. And so we operate from that parameter as well. So really understanding how a legislator is going to vote and why they're going to vote the way they do, there you go. Now this is a little bit of a separate issue. This was a budget pledge that the Gang of Eight took at the beginning of the session. This is how they were going to rate all of the budgets that came across. Now, every year in the legislature, they will vote on, I guess it's probably over 100 budgets. And they all come at the end of the session because they've been working on them all session long in JFAC. And so this year, the Gang of Eight got together and they came up with their own metric of how to look at budgets and how to decide if they were good budgets or bad budgets. So they made the decision that they would fully fund maintenance budgets, and those are the ones that are supposed to keep the lights on and the doors open, right? But then they would also, any enhancement budget that came, if it added any new employees, they would vote no. They also wanted to limit growth to 1.2%, and that's basically the replacement cost. We know that stuff needs to be replaced, that computers are on a maintenance schedule, that cars need to be replaced, things like that. But we don't need to be excessive about it. So they limited that growth to $1.2 billion. And then they said no more federal money. We're not going to, any budget that accepts any federal money, they will vote no on. Had everybody in the legislature taken that same pledge and voted that way, they would have saved $1.2 billion off of Idaho's budget this year.
1.2 billion in Idaho's budget.
Correct. Correct.
And that's what they would have saved.
Correct. Right. Idaho's just been on this trajectory of just up, 55% growth in the last 5 years. It's obscene. And every year there you go. Every year they just keep thinking they need to grow it and grow it and grow it. And we never stop. And if we don't, and I understand that Idaho's population is growing, but we are in unsustainable growth right now. And it's because there's so much waste, even in the maintenance. And actually, we're spending so much money on health and human services and Medicaid. That's where the cuts need to happen. And we just can't in Idaho. We had a plan to take able-bodied, able to work adults off of Medicaid. And we could not get that through the Senate. So Idaho is not as conservative.
So okay, so let's dig into that a little bit, because this is one that's really it's a big hot button issue with myself and a lot of people I talk to. I know this is a big hot button issue all the way around, and it's one that'll get you in trouble with one sector of people that you talk to, and it's another one that will get you applauded by the other side. It's very divisive, but at some point we have to take action to limit who's taking advantage of those entitlements, and I call them entitlements. It's when it and a lot of people. Okay, I have a home theater home automation company. I get into a lot of houses. There was a period of time back when DirecTV and Dish Network first came out that we had everything south of Salmon, Idaho. I had guys all over the state, and we went in to install those DirecTV and Dish Network systems. We had contracts for that. So I got into a lot of houses, is what I'm boiling down to. And you knew when you went into the house, it was amazing how many were just very open about it and talked about, oh, I'm disabled, so yada, yada, yada. And I look at these people, okay, they're disabled, but they're buzzing around. And while I'm installing their systems, they're in there on their computer playing games and chatting with people and sitting in front of that thing for 2 or 3, 4 hours. And they didn't have a problem doing that. So I asked myself, okay, this person's obviously got the mental acuity to work from a computer. They can obviously sit in front of a computer in that wheelchair that they're in. Why are we paying for them to sit at home? And I know this is a very harsh, and I'm going to tick some people off by saying that, but it is the question. Why do I have to pay for them to sit at home when they can obviously work?
It's a very sticky question. And we had a robust debate about it in the legislature last session. And we got that bill to take able-bodied adults off of Medicaid, but they flooded, the lefty liberals flooded the hearing rooms with sad case after sad case after sad case. They told the legislators that you're basically putting a gun to my head and pulling the trigger if you get rid of Medicaid. And it's like they didn't understand the issue. They were taking the most hard cases, which, by the way, would have still been covered by Medicaid. This was to take able-bodied working adults off of Medicaid. If you pull up that thing I sent you today from Fiscal Facts, we really need to look at where Idaho is spending their money. And I think if people could see just how much money we are spending on health and human services. So this chart right here, the circle chart, that shows our federal funds and our general funds, which come from income tax and sales tax. And then the dedicated funds are like fees and things like that. And then go down to the next page. And if you can see, and if you can put that whole screen on there so people can see that whole chart, that purple right there, that's how much we spend on health and human services in Idaho. That is
The blue, this one right here.
Yeah, the blue, yeah, 39.3%. That is the largest chunk of our government spending goes to health and human services. And then the next largest one is 31.7% education. That's, and health and human services, and PS, this is from 2024. This is going to do nothing but grow in next year's budget. It's obscene. And this is what they're wrangling with up in Congress right now. If everybody's paying attention to the big, beautiful budget bill that Trump is promoting, and I think there's some good things in that budget bill, but a larger problem is they're not tackling the spending.
Correct.
And currently, the federal government is sending something, what did they say? $7 comes from the federal government for every $1 that you spend in the state. So where's the incentive to cut Medicaid? Because they're all like, big government daddy is sending me $7 for every $1 I spent. I want the big government money. But we're on a cliff. Does everybody see this, that we cannot continue to spend like this?
And beyond that, it's still, when they separate the federal from the state like that, and they say, okay, well, we're getting, it's state money. This is state money, so we need to pay attention to this. Oh, that's federal money. We don't need to worry about that. That's coming in from they don't understand that is still your money coming out of your pocket. Yes. It's still your taxes. You're still paying for that. And yes. Not only that, but worse, that also then comes with strings attached. If you don't do this, we'll take your money from you.
They are chains. Tell me what happens if you don't pay your property tax.
Yeah, they come take your house.
Right. Tell me what happens if you don't pay your income tax.
They come take you.
That's right. So, yeah, people, you're a federal taxpayer. Look at what your tax liability is. This is obscene what's happening, and we have to stop this.
But not the people who come in there and stand in front of the legislature and cry that they would be taken off of if they were taken off of welfare, that it would be a death sentence to them. The people that come in there, they're not paying taxes, they're receiving them.
It's very, very difficult. There are some hard cases. I'm not going to stand up here and say that we need to completely cut the program, but we can certainly take able-bodied workers off of the program. Yeah. It's not made for someone like me. It's made for people who it should be a true safety net. But the problem, and Glenita is so very good at describing this, she holds up the Health and Human Services budget book that's 6 inches thick. And she said the problem is we're getting all of our information and our way to do things through the budget book when we should be getting it from the Bible. And the church has been pushed out of the way in the replacement of government.
That's
so
exactly
government
right.
is our new God.
That's exactly right. And listen, I'm not speaking from somebody who hasn't been there. There was a time in my life, it's half my life ago, 25 years ago or more, that I went through a hard time in my life, and a divorce and a loss of business. It was in 2008 when the housing bubble cracked. All my business came from new build jobs. I had 5 contractors that I worked for, and my entire business was based around it. And when that popped, things got really tight, and I ended up going through a divorce out of it. And I had a choice. I could very easily just walk down, fill out a little bit of paperwork, and start receiving that government check. Mm-hmm. But I know from looking at everybody else out there that does that, what the cost is, and there is a cost to the individual. The individual is a loss of dignity, and a lot if you're able to work but you're taking that, there is a loss of dignity to a certain extent. But there's also a cost that I knew it would take me a lot longer if I took the pressure off to get back on my feet. So I made the choice, and a lot of people do this that are on the streets, but I made a choice to live in my van for 3 months. And during that 3 month period of time, it was hot. It was summer, so I wasn't in the cold. I wasn't in a bad place, but it was hot. It was uncomfortable. I parked out behind a truck stop so I could go in and get a shower, and while I went to work,
Yeah.
and I went to work and I worked myself out. And I finally ended up with a contract doing some of that satellite install work, and I went back to what I knew how to do and doing some wireless internet work for a company over here in the Magic Valley. And I at that point in time, once I had that settled in and I knew I had work and money coming in, I called up mom and dad, said I probably ought to come down there. I'm going to need to move back to Twin Falls. I'm going to stay with you for a little while if that's okay. Um, and I'll start stockpiling some money because I had so much work available then that then it didn't make sense to stay in the van because I couldn't do all that work. I
Right.
needed somewhere to
Good.
put equipment. I needed somewhere to
Yeah.
put tools and materials and all this stuff, but I didn't quite have it. So I used it for a little bit of a hand up. And then shortly I got myself out of that and back in on my own feet. But there is a cost, and you have to have a plan for getting, if you're going to go down that path, you have to have a plan for getting off of it. And that's the problem. People
Yeah.
don't have a plan to get off.
I know.
They
Well,
walk into it.
it's too easy to stay on, and it everybody has a story like that. Some are more extreme than others, but those are character building experiences in your life. And when people are just soft right now, and when the government just continues to provide, then where's the incentive to make your life better? If we're really gonna, it's a hand out when what they need is a hand up.
Yeah.
And again, the Bible tells us that we need to be generous as Christians and give to our neighbors, but now we don't have to because the government's doing it. And people probably think I'm paying so much money in taxes. I, and they're taking care of those people. I don't need to.
Some of my most important reflection time at that stage in my life came out of that period of time too, because I removed all the distractions.
Yeah.
And the only thing that was in front of me was what am I going to do to get out of this situation? And part of that also is I had friends saying, you can come stay with us, man. What are you doing? And I said, I let this happen. And I think that's what the first thing that people need to do if they're going to get themselves out of a bad situation that you're in right now is say, I let this happen. I put myself in a situation to allow myself to get into this spot. And so now, what am I going to do to get out of it? And what am I going to do to make sure I never get back in this spot again? Because there were decisions that I could have made but you don't know until you know, and then you look back. But it's taking that personal accountability, and that's what people need to do is take the personal accountability. And this is what the government is doing by putting 39.3% of our budget into health and human services. I guarantee you, there's a lot of people on that, and if you're mad at me, tough, that are on that right now, that need to take some personal accountability and say, I'm in this situation I'm in right now because of myself. And when you work and you get out of it, there is a freedom that comes with working yourself out of that situation and recognizing and taking the personal accountability that says, man, I am strong. I am not afraid anymore. This is why I can do what I do right now and talk out against my government and talk out about the nasty things that are out there without fear, because I know I can go live in my van if I had to. Come after me.
Done it.
Come after me, buddy. Come after me, because I'm not afraid of it, because I can survive that. I can work and I can get through that. And it gives you a boldness and also a time in prayer and a time in reflection with God that you can walk in that faith and that fearlessness that comes along with that. And you're a slave to your own situation. And I'm sorry that I'm going down this side of things so much, but this is so important to our dollars are paying for this, and people need to get off that. And our legislature, you're not doing them any favors by being fearful of the repercussions that might come down if you vote a certain way. Vote on principles. Dang it. Vote on principles.
Amen.
Have some guts.
Well, any legislator who starts voting based on the next election needs to go
immediately.
Because when Ron ran the first time, he said, I'll probably only be there one term because this is how I'm going to vote. And I watched him so many times be able to calibrate a principle to a bill. they'd say, why did you vote that way? And he'd just go back, 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 and he could put it right to the first principle. And he understood so intrinsically the principles of freedom that he was able to stand on the floor as a professor and teach principles of freedom. They're
Yes.
so ingrained into his soul. And that's the kind of legislator we need in the House and Senate, is
Amen.
people who get it and are fearless and do not care about the next election. You're there. My thing is, it's not about how many bills you sponsor or how many bills you pass. Your job is to vote right. Vote
That's
right.
right. That's right. Every
That's
time.
mhm.
You're when you what here's what you're doing. You're putting yourself and your own ego. You have a mindset that, well, my state needs me. They need me so bad that I better put my principles away just a little bit on this bill so I can stay here, so I can do good for my state. That's your ego talking, buddy. That is your ego talking. That is your pride. And
Well,
we're
it's
not
built
supposed to
that
be that
way.
way.
No, and the legislature, the Capitol, is built for to stroke people's ego and boost their pride. The lobbyists there who run around and make you feel so important and spend money on you, and they're, patting you all the time, stroking you, making you feel so important. They raise you up just a little bit in committee hearing. They constantly call you, oh, senator, oh, representative. And you're in this beautiful marble building, and it's beautiful. That building is
Yeah, it's
beautiful,
gorgeous. It's wonderful.
but it's it's built to make you prideful. And so all of a sudden, and this is why you see it happen, this is why meeting and prayer every day was so important for us, because it helps you overcome the evil that is in that building, and it helps you overcome your pride. You remember why you're there, you remember the people. And that's what I would say to them all the time. You're not talking to the people in the chamber, you're talking to the constituents out there. You're talking to the mom, the single mom, the dad that's working 3 jobs to put food on the table, the forgotten man, the
Yeah.
ones that are
Yeah.
paying the taxes. Those are the ones that you need to be communicating to every day, not the people in this chamber. And just one more thing, there's 105 legislators out of a state of 2 million. That's rarefied air that they're breathing in that capital. And some of them start to get that way. They
Yeah.
think they are the only people that can do this job.
Right.
Wrong. You can't.
Yeah. And here's, I would rather a house full of mechanics, of farm workers, of clerks that are sitting behind a desk somewhere, somebody working in a fast food restaurant, because they're in the trenches. If they are godly people and principled people
Mhm.
who have passed the sniff test of faithfulness and honesty, I'd rather them in there than a bunch of attorneys.
Mhm. Well,
And
there's
for some reason, we think that oh, well, they must know the law, so let's put them in there. Do you have any idea what the ratio is of liberal attorneys versus conservative ones? You ought to take a look. There's not very many conservative ones.
well, I have to defend attorneys a little bit because my father was an
I
attorney. I
know.
have I have 6 brothers, and I think 4 of them are attorneys. But the larger point you're making here is absolutely right. I will say that it is good to have seasoned people there who have had some life experience, because, as you know, your life experience has shaped you into the person that you are. So I'm not sure I want an 18-year-old fast food worker there,
Not the
but
18-year-old, but the one that's the 60-year-old that has some life experience and finally
yeah,
realized, but he's still working
yeah.
because that's
What you
the
want,
honorable thing to do.
yes, you want principled conservatives. And I prefer that people have a biblical worldview, because it all rests on God's word, and his word doesn't ever fail us. And if we can get ourselves back to that in this country, we'll be okay. But the problem is, turned our backs. Many turned their backs on God, and he is a vengeful God too. And you know,
It would
we
do people well to remember that God asked Moses, or commanded Moses. He didn't ask him; he commanded him to build that ark. But
Noah.
God, or Noah, yeah, Moses, yeah, that told Moses to build that ark. But God didn't need any help destroying the earth, and it would do people well to remember that.
Right,
You
right,
know, he
right,
he wants us to follow him, but he doesn't need us to. He wants us
right.
to live a righteous life, but he does not need us to. He can that quick just decide what we're not here anymore,
Yeah,
and it for whatever reason he finds favor in us. But
yeah.
when I take a look around the world, I'm like, I can't believe that he hasn't just figured just already. But
I know. You keep wondering, right? Every day, as more and more evil is uncovered, you keep wondering, when, Lord, when are you going to come again? I guess we still have 100 good people, right? So he keeps saving us for another
I guess if there's
another
still
go
one,
around. There's still one.
there's still one. So, talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges that you that the Freedom Caucus is in the future coming into 2025 that you're hoping to overcome. What are some of the things that they're talking about? You have daily contact, I think, with these folks. So,
What's really fascinating to me is when I talk to other directors across the state is that they're all fighting the exact same battles in their state, all of them. Conservatives who, or Republicans who say they're conservative but are not, battling budgets. Budgets is the number one issue that the Freedom Caucus is tackling, and they're tackling it in Congress and they're tackling it in states as well. And it's election integrity. It's Wyoming is really one of the sort of the premier states right now because they have a Freedom Caucus member who is actually their Speaker of the House, and they've
oh
been
wow,
able to do and they've been able to do a lot of really great things, but they have a crappy governor, and
sounds familiar.
right, right. So you have all these things, and the House right now, with the addition of the 5 new people from the Gang of Eight, the House was able to help make significant inroads into what's going on in Idaho. And these 3 that we have in the Senate are the reason why we got school choice passed. So the 8 has made a huge difference. It's been a great addition to the already established conservatives in the House, especially. But in 2025 and 2026, well, in 26, we got to bring all these people back. And so I get tired of people nitpicking on them because do you want Jeff Schroeder instead of Christy Zitto? I mean, really? You really want a Megan Blanksema back? Really?
You want
Like,
to talk about having gone through the fire and actually proving themselves is Christy.
oh, I
She
know.
was like a lone wolf
Oh,
of a true conservative on the Senate, and she still stood firm.
I know.
But
I know.
continuing on, I'm sorry I didn't mean, but
Oh, no, no, you are right. And Christy, for all those for that term, was by herself. Now she has Josh and Glenita, and they operate as a team. And there is something very powerful, even with 3 people, that when you have a team, and that's the point here of the Gang of Eight. It's a team. You cannot go to the legislature by yourself and think that you're going to be able to survive with your principles intact because the wind and the waves, it's too much. And so the 8 of them are this core group of people that, gosh, are we perfect? No. Are they perfect? No. Do they do stupid things? Yes, we all do. But what we do is we operate on grace, love, forgiveness, and prayer. And we know that our power and our abilities come from God, and so we have that humility to bring our problems and our pride and lay it down and work together. And And that's really the power that comes when you have a tight knit group of people that didn't really know each other at all. I mean, the Magic Valley Miracle, they worked really hard together. Kent and Lucas knew each other. Christy and Faye knew each other, but the 8 of them coming together has been an absolutely special experience for me to work with. I've just been very, very blessed by associating with them, and they are their own people. I'm promising you, nobody tells them what to do.
I'm trying to bring up really quick, speaking about principles and humility, and they're not perfect, but they're willing to, um, they're they're willing, they have enough humility to admit that when they miss it. Kent Marmot
Yeah.
recently did a Facebook post, and that's what I'm looking at, which highlights exactly that. And it was on this flag bill, and it was and he voted in favor of it, as did almost everybody. But he came out with an explanation that said if he basically if he had it to do over again, he wouldn't have done it. But he was new. So this is talking about mistakes. He was new and he just came in, and then and I'm paraphrasing, and I wish I had it to pull up so I wouldn't paraphrase, but hopefully I'll get him on here one of these days and he can talk about it. But he just said I was new. And so I depended on some of the other legislators that have been there for a while, and them to understand the bill process and just exactly what was there, because he was getting his feet wet. And he said, and I trusted some people and some guidance that I probably shouldn't have. And in retrospect, I wish that they said that they couldn't pass the bill if they didn't if they put some teeth to it. And so anyway, he apologized, and that takes a lot of guts, especially for
Yeah.
coming out your first time around, and just said, I would have done this differently. And that's the guy that I want to vote for, because we are all human. We all make mistakes. We do things, and I won't even call it stupid. It wasn't stupid. It was just he inexperience.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love having an inexperienced legislator in there that has character and has principles and has faith and has humility and is willing just to come out and say, hey, I'm doing the best I can for you, voter. Here's where I did things that in retrospect I might do a little bit differently going forward, but vote for me again, and I will use that experience now combined with that knowledge or combined with all of my principles to do a better job for you. And I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, let's bring them back. And
He's fantastic. Kent is fantastic. He has an ability to process and digest legislation. And to be fair, I guess we all just naively assumed that Mayor McLean would follow the law, but we should have known better, right?
yeah, she came
It's
from
Mayor
Portland. You
McLean.
should have known better.
No,
Sorry.
I know. I know. But
But
that's a gutsy move for Kent to
it really
get
is.
on there and say that. Mhm.
It,
It
it, it
is.
really is, but it's also very honorable.
Yeah.
And I don't expect anybody to be perfect. I want everybody to strive for perfection and to constantly be working towards that goal and being able to do a good job. It's not perfection is something that you will never arrive at, but it is
Right.
something that we do strive to get better. And as long as you're doing that and you have the right principles and you have the right convictions, then I'll put everything I have behind you.
Yeah.
But you start compromising on principles, and I'll do everything I can to get you the heck out of there.
Well, another thing that is commonly said around the Capitol is these guys are new, they're new legislators. Just let them get their feet wet, let them figure out the system for a couple years, and then they can come back and they can really hit it hard. Well, sometimes you only get one session.
That's right.
And so if you just go in there, and I loved watching the House, especially this year, those 5 don't even look like freshmen anymore. They operate as a unit, as a team. They did some difficult maneuvers this session, and they don't look like freshmen. They're operating as a unit, man. They're seasoned.
You want to know, I think, one of the most underrated and not spoken about enough and highlighted representatives. This guy right here, David Levitt.
Yeah.
You talk about somebody who went in that was green and wet behind the ears and has grown tremendously. And in fact, he'll be on here on Friday. So
Oh, good.
I've asked Dave to come on because I just think the world of him. This is a guy that is truly humble, that is truly just uh, he has a heart of a lion.
Yes.
And around the outside when he was first coming in, he looked a little rough coming in, and he just needed to get organized, and
Yeah.
we helped him a little bit on his campaign as he was coming around, and gave him some advice and guidance. And then coming back around this time, he is seasoned. He is on point, and
Yes.
he did some bold things already in this last legislative session that I'm not going to take the wind out of his sails. I'm going to talk about it on Friday. But come on, be on here on Friday. Hear that
Yeah.
interview. Get to know David Levitt. My goodness, what a and he's just probably I think one of the prizes that came
Yes.
out of taking a chance on a guy.
You have many gifts in Magic Valley. Clint Hostetler is so good at debating and getting to the nut of the issue there. He gets right to the core of it. Glenita, of course, is
Uh,
just she's my biblical, guide. And then Josh, I'll tell you,
that's a sharp
Josh
guy right
Cole,
there. I
for
love
being as young
Josh.
as he is, every time he stood up on the floor, they were like feared him. They were sitting up because he articulates a point. He's incredibly passionate in his speaking, on point. I, every one of these. Faye is another little gem. She doesn't talk a lot on the floor, but when she speaks, it's from experience, it's from her heart, and she's unshakable. Lucas, I mean, I've spent so much time with these people. Lucas is such a principled Christian man who totally gets the freedom principles. I I spent hours and hours and hours with these people, and I we are so tight. It's such a great group. We're knitted and bonded together in and we've all trauma bonded is what I say going through that. And I've known Christy for years, so I could go on and on and on about the qualities of these people. If we had a legislature full of this, we'd be fine. And I don't want to discount the solid good legislators that are
Oh,
already
of
there.
course.
There's a bunch, but this 8, we need them back. We need them all back. Everybody needs to work their guts out to bring them back.
So this brings me up to the next point. There is going to be an attack. I believe that we are outside of just the vote of or the battle between Democrats and between Republicans. That battle is long over. It is
Yes.
now between good and evil, between conservative and liberal, and it doesn't matter anymore what that letter next to their name is. It doesn't. It doesn't mean. I hate to say this, and we need to get it back to that. The Republican Party has a lot of work to do to get back to where the R next to the name actually stands for something.
Yep.
It's supposed to. But and in the Magic Valley, we realized that, and we ousted the 3 worst offenders of being truly a Democrat that decided to run as a Republican so that they could get elected in Idaho. But that's the game. That's what these people understand, is that if they have a D next to their name, they're probably not going to get elected unless they are over there in Boise or one of the more liberal areas of the state. So these people now, what's happened is our true conservatives that are shining a light on the wolves in sheep clothing. And they don't like it. They don't like that light. They don't like to have that spotlight on them. They don't like the accountability. They don't like the honesty that's and the transparency that's being put back to the people. They don't like the Gang of 8. They hate the Gang of 8. And so, what can we do to help these people of the battle that's about ready to come down on them? Because I know they are going to be under a target. They're going to be under attack, and they already are.
Well, the first thing is it takes money to win elections. And so contribute till it hurts. And I mean, that's just the reality of it. The other thing is social media is a nasty, mean place. and people will just lie. And I have been lied about so many times on social media that I mean, I just, whatever, it's just another day. And they lie about me, they lie about the Gang of Eight. And it's good to have a group of committed citizens who will stand up for them, because it hits different when it's citizens defending them as when it's me on there defending myself, you know. But it's important to defend them and to tell the truth. When someone's lying, you need to correct it with the truth. And I would just suggest everybody subscribe to Christy Zitto's Substack. That's where the Gang of Eight communicates through, is Christy Zitto's Substack. So if you just get on a Substack and just search for her name, you can find all of their latest updates. And then share, and talk to people. That's the biggest thing. Your circle, Facebook and Twitter are not real. They do create a narrative, but every person has about 10 or 20, or with your extended family, 50 or more of people that you can influence and talk to. And that's what we need to do is build your influence, your group, and share the truth with them and activate them. We have to get people off their couches. There's Christy's Substack. Yep. And you don't need to be a paid subscriber. You can just join for free, and then you can get her messaging. Again, it just comes through her. It's her channel.
But by the way, do subscribe, because that does help put money into their campaign.
It does. And all of them, every one of these people are going to face a very strong challenge, because these people are fearless, and the liberals cannot have truth tellers in the Capitol. They want people who will toe the party line. And so they will all be under attack. But you are so well represented by these people. So you have a gift and you need to keep it.
And I know there's a lot of people out there that do watch this that may not be Christians, and they, oh no, Christian nationalism, we can't have that in there. Listen, taking religion out of it, let's just talk about principles. Yep. These are principled, moral people. So who do you want in there? Even if you're not a Christian, you don't want the Christian nationalism. I love that they're using this buzz phrase now. Give me a break. But do you want somebody that actually has a paradigm that sets their sails, that sets their compass in a certain direction? Or do you want somebody who's nilly-willy, who will do whatever it takes to stay there? Mm-hmm. These people are willing to risk it all, literally, to represent you. Yep. Versus the other people who just want to stay there. And that's what you got to get through your head. And the people that sit down and pray every morning, okay, again, let's take the religion out of that for those folks. They get together and they set their compass every morning.
Yeah. My dog.
Oh, that's okay. They set their moral compass and they get it straight. And you have to do that. If you're going to be a principled person and you're going to go into the swamp, you got to get up and put on the galoshes. And that's what they're doing in the morning. They get up in the morning and they pray. They put on their galoshes and they get ready to go into the swamp with protection. And that protection being their faith and God, but it's also setting their mind right before they even start talking about politics. Mm-hmm. That's what Christian people do, whether you agree with what they believe or not. They have principles and they have morals. And if you sit down and you were to take a moment and write down, what do I want my legislator to do when they go into that session? Well, I think this right here is highly representative. And I've shown this before, and I'll show it over and over and over again, because I think this right here, their guiding principles, they have some. Okay, I challenge you to go find any other legislators' guiding principles put out there where you can see what they mean, and this is how they're going to vote. They have decided that this represents that moral duty that they have to go there. That's who you want. That's who you want representing you, not somebody. At least you know what they stand for. Go see what I'm sorry, I'm going to name out a couple of names, but go see what Kelly Anthon. What does he stand for? What's his guiding principles that determines how he's going to vote for a bill that's going to affect you? Where are they? And where's the proof? He might say, well, I have some, it's this and this and this. unless it's in writing and I can see it, it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to go by your bills, and I want to look at those bills, and I want to balance them against your guiding principles and see how you did, see how it stacks up. I
Yep.
challenge you to find anybody out there that stands that strong, that's willing to put their principles out there and put it on the line for you. Vote for these people and keep them in there, because these are the legislators you want.
Yep, I couldn't say it any better. This is why we got into politics in Idaho, was because we got sick and tired of legislators coming home telling us how conservative they were. When we were watching the legislature and going, no, no, you're not. But they would just flat out not tell you the truth. I mean,
Yeah.
they were just, it was so disgusting. We just had enough. So it is incredibly refreshing to work with legislators who do what they say.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we need. They talk a good talk, and then
Yeah.
when it comes time to walk it, they just blame everybody else for their tripping up.
Yeah.
And it's disgusting to me. And I'm so, this is the most refreshing side of politics that I've ever seen. What's happening in the State Freedom Caucus Network.
Yeah.
It is just, it's, I don't know that in my lifetime, that at least as long as I started paying attention to politics, that I've ever seen this level of accountability and transparency and this happening in politics. And it's exciting to see, but you also know that they're going to want to get out from underneath this as fast as they can. And they're going to be under attack, and we need to be ready for it. And also what we really desperately need, and I think I can speak for you, Maria, and the Freedom Caucus, they need boots on the ground. Maybe
Yes.
you don't have money, but you have time.
Yes.
They need your time. There's a lot of things behind the scene that can just be organized. If you're good at organizing, they could use some people helping kind of organize them. If you're good at public speaking, they could use some people that could speak on their behalf. If you're good at talking to your neighbors and sharing thoughts and ideas and articulating those thoughts and ideas, they need people to go door to door. And they don't send you out by yourself. You go out in a couple of twos, so that you're out there, you're safe, you're protected, and they only send you out to people that are already registered voters to go talk to. But they need people to go talk to them so that they can say, hey, the people you're voting for, they may not be voting in line with your principles. Let me ask you, what are your principles? What are the things that are important to you? Because is this guy really voting that you gave him the check on the vote last time around on the ballot, but he may not be representing you, and to share that with people, because the typical Idaho voter, I don't know a better word, and I don't mean this as a dog, they're ignorant. They're ignorant to what is really going on, and that is by design, by the way. They want to keep you that way. They just want you to vote with the letter and not with the votes, and not with how they voted in the legislature, not how they represented you. They wanted to vote for the letter, not the representation, and that's a problem.
Yeah. I've knocked on thousands and thousands of doors. The first door is the scariest, but then you quickly find out that people are happy to talk to you.
They are.
And they're surprised that you're on your doorstep. I can't tell you how many times Ron would be like, this is me. This is my card, and this is me. I'm your legislator. And they'd go, what? What are you doing on my door? And, he'd have a conversation with them, and that you can educate them. And it does take time, but that is very impactful. The one by one makes a huge difference. And that does take manpower. So that's a huge way to help.
I ran for precinct committee man in our precinct here, and went door to door. And I had people tell me that, you know what, you're the only one who's ever shown up on my door. You're going to get my vote just because of that.
Yeah.
And I missed it by 26 votes. But I ran primarily because we had those three terrible legislators over here that, just in case they got back in, I could hold them accountable and be part of censuring them in the Republican Party. So fortunately, but I spent most of my time not talking about me. I spent most of my time saying, do you understand these people and what they're doing? And this is why I'm running, so that I can hold them accountable. And somebody needs to hold them accountable. And so that's how I ran. And I said, and by the way, here's some people that'll vote better for you. And so my whole time running was just doing the job of a precinct committee man, which was educating the voter.
Good.
And
we need that.
And people loved but it is, they love having you show up at their door. They don't, People think they're going to slam the door in their face. They only do that to the Kirby guy. Okay. Not the guy that's coming in there, because these are voters. And if they take the time to show up and vote, then they are interested in what's going on
Yeah,
politically. And so
true.
they love having that extra education. But
Yeah.
Maria, I'm going to give you the last say here. We're at an hour mark here. So
Great.
what else would you like to share with the people before we end the show?
I would just say go out and meet your legislators and ask them the tough questions and ask them what books they've read that shape their political beliefs and why they vote the way they vote, and what is their what are their principles, what guides them as legislators. And then I would just say, if you're being pulled or called to perhaps run for office, whether it's legislature or precinct committee officer, you need to do that, because we need more committed conservatives to run for office. Our bench is not very deep. We need more. We need to grow this gang of eight into the gang of infinity. And I am just so pleased to work with such committed legislators who really have the heart of the people first and vote for the people first. And just lastly, everything, almost everything that you read negatively about people on social media is not true. When you see people who attack personally rather than on policy, you know that their agenda is not a good one. So just, I think we need to stay above board and go after policy and just leave people alone. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be able to work with all these people, and for this opportunity to talk to you, Shane. It's been really great.
Thank you, Maria. On that note about social media, I will add this: if they are attacking the person instead of their policy, it means they don't have any policy reasons to attack them.
Yep.
Otherwise, they would be using the policy, because that's the evidence to build their case. So if they're attacking the individual, if they're attacking their looks, if they're attacking their the way they talk, if they're attacking the way they act, any of that kind of stuff, it means they don't have anything of substance to go after them for, and that's your first red flag.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Now I need to talk for just a minute on Wednesday's show. I can't go into details right now, but I want to say this. Going into Wednesday's show, there was something that was brought to my attention last night, and it was so important that 11:30 at night, I sent Dr. Daniel Babinski a text message, to which he responded at that hour, that highlighted what this is that we need to talk about on Wednesday. And my words to him were, what we're going to talk about, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but what we're going to talk about is a hot button issue that is such a hot issue that there are people that are it will put us at risk. And so I normally do this show with Dr. Daniel Babinski on Wednesday. But I said, if you don't want to be a part of this particular show, I fully understand, but I fully intend to uncover this on Wednesday. So it's a very important issue. I'm not going to say I'm frightened, because I'm a man of faith, and I believe that God put this in my hands to talk about on Wednesday. And to Dr. Daniel Babinski's credit, he's coming on Wednesday. He said, absolutely, we need to cover this, and we need to shine a light on this. This is corruption at the highest levels in the state of Idaho. And we're doing some digging, just because we want to bring nothing but facts on Wednesday. But what we're going to be talking about, if it is the truth, and I believe it truly is, I believe in my heart that it is the truth. I'm choosing my words carefully for a reason, because there's some powerful people that can destroy us, and have gone after people and destroyed them financially, that we're going to be highlighting and talking about on Wednesday. So the reason I bring this up is, it's very important. I hope that people will watch on Wednesday, but more importantly, I hope that you will pray for us. That we need some guidance, we need wisdom, and we certainly need God's protection on us. So please be praying for us this week before we come up. And I'm not doing a big puff up to try to create some kind of a buzz to get people to watch the show by saying this. This is truly on my heart. And so please do pray for us, and please be here Wednesday morning, because the more people that see what we're going to present on Wednesday, that's where the power comes from to protect us. Is there's power in numbers as more people start asking the questions. So that's all I'm going to say about it. But please do be praying for both of us before we come into our show on Wednesday, and please be here. So. Maria, thank you very much. So Wednesday we have a hot potato, and we're going to toss it around a little bit. And on Friday, we have David Levitt, and so
Awesome.
he's going to come on the show, and I am looking forward to that and enjoying that. And so we'll see you here for both of those. Maria, thank you again for all that you do. I love you guys, you and Ron, salt of the earth, and thank you for all that you do and for putting yourself